Sorry, there was a technical problem, so there was an interruption. So I go back. I was reading from the third manuscript, right, the section on private property and communism. I will then be speaking for a couple of more minutes, and then put both, send you both videos. But in any case, I was reading this, right, that I was saying communism as positive overcoming of private property. You will find that in this section, and he says it is the restoration of man as a social, and that is to say human being. Okay, it is then this communism, it is the what he calls the genuine resolution of the antagonism, right, the struggle, the antagonism between man and nature, and between man and man, human being and human being, among the friend and enemy, relation that we saw in Carl Schmitt, the war of everyone against everyone that we saw to begin with in with Hobbes. Okay, it is that's what communism for Marx is, the good life, one might say. Okay, it is the true resolution of the conflicts, and I can go into that, but that's very philosophical, very interesting. That's the philosophical meaning of communism, right? The resolution of the conflicts again between existence and essence. Objectification, right? We are objects, we are objectified, and we objectify ourselves, as we saw, also through work, labor, and so on, and self affirmation, to be what one wants to be, what one can be, the potential, right? Freedom and necessity. And I said that already, that it is this passage toward freedom that Marx emphasizes individual and species. That would be very interesting to elaborate on. I leave that to you. What is the connection there? It is the riddle of a history solved, and it knows itself as this solution. Okay, so in any case, see what you can make of this, but especially focus on the question of alienation. What is it to be alienated? Basically, what is it to experience oneself as another? Alienation is also not only in Marx is found, and it doesn't only have to do with our, the economic aspect of our existence, but also with the psychological aspect of it. I mean, another philosopher of the 19th century as well, Kierkegaard, very important philosopher that I teach in modern philosophy, also speaks of the same idea of alienation as a despair, as anxiety. I mean, today, especially living, I don't know, in a big city like New York, everybody is, most people are lonely and alienated. They live their life as if it were the life of another, very often, and certainly wage labor, the work that we do because we must, right, pay rent and buy food and pay back our debt and so on and so forth. That is the source of a great alienation. There is alienation, but it is also the source of great anxiety and so on and so forth. Okay, I leave that to you to think about. But for Marx, this another point, since I have a little more time, that I want to highlight is this question of the senses that also comes with the overcoming of the imposition brought about by the necessity to work, right? And so he speaks of this still in this manuscript, in this section of the third manuscript. Let me see if I can find precisely. Yes, for you it would be on the question of emancipation, the emancipation, right, of the senses, which is very important, and the word emancipation is used a lot here, of course, but if you go to page 73 of the third manuscript, okay, so speaking about again the supersession, the overcoming of a private property, we can talk more about that. Again, you can ask questions, but what is private property? A political and legal category, right? I mean, what makes property appropriation, but who appropriates what and who owns? I mean, think about again the master and slave dialectic we saw. The supersession of private property, Marx says, is therefore the complete emancipation of all human senses, the body, and attributes. But it is this emancipation precisely because the senses and attributes have become human. Right? So again, we go back to the becoming human, becoming social, becoming human again, subjectively as well as objectively. The eye has become a human eye, just as its object has become a social human object made by man for man, by a human being for a human being. In other words, made for use and enjoyment, and not made for the market in the capitalist sense, only for profit, basically, for the so I mean, that's the idea of going back to or going forward to a more human dimension of living and existence. That's what basically Marx is speaking about. And also remember the conflict between we saw existence and essence and so on and so forth comes back here as well. This is again a page, remember, 73, very interesting paragraph, right, that I'm reading from. The senses, the bodily senses, have become then therefore become theoreticians. What is it to be a theoretician? To do theory, to see things and understand things. Things have become theoreticians in their immediate praxis. Theory and praxis together, no longer distinguished, no longer separated. That's basically the idea of the overcoming of this type of power relations and property relations. There are power relations. We saw the question of power relations with Hegel. We saw the question of power and power relations with the theory of sovereignty, already formulated by Hobbes and then in Schmidt. It is still, power relations that we are speaking about, but the subversions of these power relations. So the point is not only to interpret but to change the world as well. I hope I gave you some sense of this very rich, very interesting, complex, and there would be so much more to say. I can't go into that now. But again, feel free to ask questions, and in any case, do write your discussion board entry, journal entry especially. The journal entry is longer, more formal. It is almost like a short essay. I say at least in the order of 100 to 100 words. Okay, thank you. See you next time.